I'm Gary, and this is Coasting with Culture, which is all about combining theme park visits and riding roller coasters with various cultural experiences around the world. After starting a visit to California a day early to spend some time exploring downtown Los Angeles and heading to a hockey game between the Kraken and Kings, there was a morning train ride with some great views and a chance to join a friend the same day for getting our first rides on two of the area's newest coasters and a few other rides as well. This opened up the second day as a chance for some redemption credits, heading back north for some coasters that had either been closed or inaccessible. The morning after the hockey game with Greg, I booked myself on the Pacific Surfliner from Amtrak, which travels between Los Angeles and San Diego. My hope was to arrive about the same time I was originally planning to be there when I was going to fly into San Diego so I could keep my same rental car reservation. This was my second time on this train, as I had ridden it from Anaheim down to San Diego back in 2015 when I joined friends in Disneyland for a day, then went south for my brother's wedding in La Jolla. It was interesting to see the city before sunrise, and to see it get lighter and lighter as we transitioned from Los Angeles County to Orange County and then further south. The timing of this morning's departure worked out wonderfully to enjoy that morning glow as we made it to the latter half of the route that rolls along the coast of the Pacific Ocean, offering some spectacular views. As it heads inland a bit before the Torrey Pines area, you'll see some of the hills that surround San Diego. And before long, you're approaching the city. Watch carefully right before the Old Town stop, and you might find part of the motivation for this trip in the distance. After hopping off at Old Town Station, I grabbed the trolley for a few stops to get to the airport area, so I grabbed my rental car and get back to the original itinerary. Sort of. So in theory, this is where the original trip begins. However, there have been some changes even to this part of the trip because of somebody else coming into town for the same coasters. You might remember my friend Keith, who I joined along with Rick and Kat to knock out a few county fair coasters in Kansas the previous summer. It just so happened he was making his way to San Diego for the day to grab Emperor at SeaWorld and Super Grover's Boxcar Derby at Sesame Place. While I had planned to split the parks between the 2 days I was in town, I thought it'd be more fun to visit them with a friend, and I later realized this would create the potential to add another credit or two, but we'll get to that later. For now, since Keith's flight was a couple hours away from arriving, I went ahead and spent some time at SeaWorld. This was my first visit to the park since 2018, when Electric Eel opened, and like that visit, there was a chance to try the park's newest coaster, Emperor. So this would be the first of the smaller B&M dive coasters that I've done, with the smaller height, the narrower trains, and one thing I like about this over the larger ones are those quick, snappy transitions, especially as you'll see behind me here. The train just flies through these different elements. They don't dawdle or dink around. It's not that nice lingering loop or inversion that you see on the bigger ones. This one is just bam, 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 goes through them very quick. And that's a lot of fun. I like that approach. The drop is also really fun with this. Get a nice little bit of air going into it. And then of course, one of the best things about this ride, the sights of Mission Bay. If I had to rate the views from the top of all the B&M dive coasters out there, I think this is on top, followed closely by Valraven at Cedar Point because of the skyline of the park itself. However, it's gorgeous when you get to the top of this thing. And you've got the bay right there, the ocean in the distance, the mountains not too far away as well. Definitely a great addition for SeaWorld San Diego. Before heading out to pick up Keith, I went to enjoy a couple laps on what I find to be one of the more surprising coasters of California, Manta. This mock launching coaster is far from the most intense ride out there, but it has a fun layout that really interacts with its surroundings and offers some better airtime than what you will find on the majority of coasters in the state. This ride seems to get overlooked in the Golden State, but it's one to make sure you catch if you come to SeaWorld. After picking Keith up from the airport, we went south to Chula Vista for Sesame Place. Prior to this season, this had been the SeaWorld chain's San Diego area water park, sharing the same Aquatica name as the Orlando one. With the retheme to Sesame Place, the water park remains largely intact, but has added some Sesame Street theming, including a few interactive windows where you can see various characters, and a number of family rides that have been placed in spots between some of the water slides. Of course, the reason for Keith and I to stop here was the coaster that they added, Super Grover's Boxcar Derby. If you've been to Busch Gardens Williamsburg or Busch Gardens Tampa, this coaster has the exact same layout as their coasters with a Grover theme. A great ride for the younger crowd to get their first coaster experience. With the credit obtained, Keith and I went over to SeaWorld, which gave him a chance to get his Emperor credit, and since we rode a coaster based on penguins, it wouldn't feel right to go without seeing some, even if they weren't exactly the same type. We also grabbed some lunch and a few other rides, along with a visit to the sea turtles. One ride that neither Keith or I had yet was Tidal Twister, and while I'm still on the fence about whether I'd count it as a coaster or not, it really didn't matter today, because the ride wasn't open, so we'd have to wait for another time. But you can still enjoy the tide pool next to it. We ended our visit with a lap on Manta, and from there, I dropped Keith back off at the airport and made my way to the hotel where I was staying that night. But it wasn't until I made one of my customary California stops before I was ready to call it a night. Much like the beginning of this trip, the end of it also had a pretty drastic change that didn't involve San Diego as much as the original plan did. With a chance to get some missing credits, I decided to take the drive up north before coming back to San Diego for the flight home. After driving up I-15 for a while, I got to a familiar stretch of road on US 330, which would have far less snow in the higher elevations than it did back in December. Much like the Rim of the World Highway, there were several great views to enjoy along the way. Getting to the Big Bear Lake area, it's quite hard to miss that mountain coaster right off the road, which I wasn't able to get to during my last visit to the region. The coaster itself is pretty fun, offering 2 lifts to help add to the length of the ride, and it even has a bit of theming, which is a bit unusual for mountain coasters. One of the neat offerings of this particular ride is they have video cameras installed on each car, which gives you the option to purchase a full-length video of your ride experience by taking the RFID card that was inserted into the car and scanning it at one of the preview screens after riding. With one of the 2 coasters knocked out, it was time to head down from the mountains and over to Riverside to visit Castle Park. This stop wouldn't be done alone though, as I joined Ricky and David, 2 local members of the Buzz Bars Coaster Club, for a few rides. The first of which was the Screamin' Demon, which was standing but not operating when I previously visited the park back in 2016. A Fabry spinning mouse coaster which, unlike other spinning mouse coasters, didn't really have much spinning. A bit of a bummer, but I was happy to get that credit. One of the funnier moments from our visit came as we rode Merlin's Revenge, a Vekoma Jr. coaster. While I had previously ridden it before, I had never experienced one of these overshooting the brakes because of a heavier train, so we ended up taking an extra lap to see if it would stop in the right spot. And it didn't. Luckily, it's only a 1-train coaster and didn't stop far from where it was supposed to, so everyone could exit easily. Another feature of the park was Kevin the Peacock, who had his feathers out on full display, although the park did recommend being cautious around him. We also enjoyed a few other rides in the park, including the Tilt-A-Whirl and their car ride. We also played a bit of mini golf before I had to head back to the airport. As much as I would have enjoyed hanging out with the guys a bit longer, I had to get back to San Diego so I could catch my flight home. And with that, all that was left was the drive back home to Everett. It was a short but fun trip to Southern California, getting a chance to enjoy a few attractions in Los Angeles, another Kraken hockey game, and a few coasters of the region. A big thank you to Greg, Keith, Ricky, and David for joining me on several of these stops, as it was great to catch up with everyone and add some of the newest coasters in the state. Thank you for watching this Coasting with Culture video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and click the subscribe button below to see future videos here on YouTube, like these ones which you may enjoy as well. Additional content can be found at coastingwithculture.com, and you can also follow Coasting with Culture on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for announcements, previews, and updates. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, take care and safe travels.